Good morning, everybody. My name is Winston Robinson. I am a facilitator at the prestigious Sarah Stevenson Tuesday Morning Forum. Along co-facilitators, Ms. Laura McClellan, Ms. Carlenia Ivory, Ms. Jackie Edwards Walton, Ms. Natalie McElrath, Ms. Mary Johnson, Mr. Shea Abdullah, Mr. Gary Young, Dr. Thomas Moore, our house musician, Steve Johnston, our website editor and archivist, and our Cheryl, Mr. Rita Chapman. As always, we begin with a morning prayer. We will ask the distinguished, legendary gentleman himself, Mr. Ken Coons, to please lead us in a word of prayer. Dress for the occasion, too.
Y'all know I'm gonna pass the plate after this. What they say about legends, I have to remind y'all, half of it ain't true. That means probably half of y'all ain't gonna believe what I get of it, no way. But anyway, they asked me to pray. And I think I've almost kind of roped myself into it because I pray seriously. And that will be the same today. It's a beautiful day that the Lord has made, and we'll all rejoice and be glad in it. But not just being glad in it, but what we do in it. May it be done to glorify His name. So let us bow our heads for a moment of prayer. Dear Lord, thank you for this day. A new day we've never seen before. We'll never see again. Lord, all that we do or say is done with the intention of, Lord, glorifying you. And may that words that were spoken so truly, those of us who love you, Lord, believe you, Lord, trust you, Lord, and then there are others, Lord, they ain't like us. So, Lord, we ask that you continue to bless and strengthen those of us who know you, those of us who believe you and trust you. And may the words of our mouths today be used, Lord, as instruments to better serve you in all that we do. Amen.
Amen. Amen. From the book of Kendrick Lamar, chapter 3, verse 38. Oh, man. Thank you, brother. Thank you. Ken Coast quote Kendrick Lamar in prayer is not the way I thought I would start my day. Oh, man. So yes, we do this every Tuesday. We do this every Tuesday. Our forum runs from 8:30 a.m. to 9:45 a.m., at which we will take announcements from the audience. Announcements also can be sent to Steve at S. Johnston, that's Johnston with a T, at TuesdayForumCharlotte.org. If we have anyone here for the first time, would you please stand?
Church.
Ooh. So you just heard the sermon and the prayer, so you know what. There's no use your home church, and I'm sorry. But just announce, give us your name, and let us know if you have any associations you'd like to share.
My name is Kennedy Higgins. My family owns a nonprofit called Carolyn's Grace. I go to West Charlotte High School, and I'm in the 12th grade.
Yeah.
My GPA is a 3.9.
Yeah. Look at that. Yeah. Tell me your internship. Say it. All right.
I'm Ted Follett. I'm
Of course.
retired and recovering attorney, and here to see Brother Watt and his compatriots. And I've heard about this a lot. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Follett. Man, a housing warrior. Anyway, when you go, there's so much history.
Dr. Tommy Watson, good morning, everyone. I am new to Charlotte, maybe about 11 years now, so it's great to be in the area.
According to Charlotte rules,
Right.
your grandfather, you're like a veteran. You're from here, basically.
So I'm a writer and executive producer of a movie that will be bringing, major movie we're looking at bringing to Charlotte here, about my life story growing up in Denver, homeless with parents who were drug addicts. and arrested 121 times by the time he was in high school.
Oh, wow.
So it's going to talk about and give people experience of what it's like growing up from being homeless, which is different from poverty. So love to connect with folks in the room to get support and try to collaborate and support you all as well. Thank you.
Thank you for joining.
My Sunday school teacher.
Okay.
Malcolm Stearns, I also own a nonprofit, Back to the Basics. I also have a business that do counsel with that game. So I'm from Charlotte. You know,
We know you up on now. Where's that?
East Mecklenburg.
Legend.
You want to go to the league? Ask him. He'll take you there. You got a son.
Hi, my name is Deanna Smith. I wear a couple of hats. So I am the first African-American title company in the Southeast region. I own my own real estate broker, and yes, I do have a nonprofit called Homeowners Pursuing Education.
All right.
Good morning, I'm Brittany Dinkins. I'm a former speech language pathologist turned full-time real estate investor, and I'm just looking to connect more, and I want to be a part of the solution for the affordable housing crisis and like with the rentals and things of that nature. So I'm just looking to continue building.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Unfortunately, I'm a practicing attorney. Just kidding. I am a practicing attorney. I'm in-house at Wells Fargo, and I currently serve as the chair of Inland.
All right.
Salutations and good morning. My name is Bobby Forrest. I attend the prestigious West Charlotte Dubs, so you already know. And I'm here on behalf of myself. I'm running the first youth-led town hall that Charlotte has ever seen. And I'm here to promote it, and I want to see all of you beautiful black people there this Thursday at 5 to 8 at City Hall. That's right. If I'm going to do it big, I'm going to do it big. It's at City Hall. And I hope to see everybody here. Thank you very much.
Boy, you are your mama's child. If you don't know, that is the son of Colette Forrest.
Good morning. I was here one of the last meetings, but I'll go ahead and stand up because I can do this part. My name is Petronila Clark, and I am the daughter of Dr. Blanche Penn. I don't have any of those type of accolades that you all have, but I do have a master's in being a mother of an autism child. So if anybody has any type of things that can help me out in there, because I am stepping into the autism. He is only 3 years old, so I'm just learning about it. So I'm here to just connect and see what you all talk about and see if there's anywhere I can pull from your information.
Write down his name, LaBecky Rowe. LaBecky Rowe. Listen, you'll be so, listen. LaBecky Rowe. All right, guys, so again, we do this every Tuesday. We have an esteemed group of legends on our panel today. We have, who will join us up here, Mr. Congressman Mel White, Attorney Geraldine Sumter, and Attorney James Ferguson. Oh, I'm so excited. So following the presentation, we will take questions from the audience. Please raise your hand and we will add your name to a list. I will call on your name in the order in which we recorded. I will call. We do this all the time. So questions should be no longer than 30 seconds. And also questions should be questions. All right, questions should be questions. The answer they give you is the answer you receive. And that's it. We don't do back and forth. We have a timekeeper, Miss Nathalie McElrath. She will hold up her signs when it is time to go. Without further ado, we will allow each panelist to give you, the audience, us, about 2 minutes of an introduction. Tell us about yourself, where you're from, what brought you to the legal space, and how did that transition into a business space in which you would, is that it? So again, the conversation today is, if you don't know, just a quick synopsis. We all know the legendary resumes each of these individuals have in the legal space. Some of the most brilliant legal minds we have in this nation. However, selfishly, I wanted to bring a panel together to talk about something that often goes overlooked. They formed a consortium led by Julius Chambers to purchase land in the former Brooklyn community and build a 7-story professional building. Julius Chambers was 35. James Ferguson was 29. And Mel Watt was 26. I feel so insecure about my life. They had it together at such young. So that is the conversation I wanted to have. So you can tell us, just in your introduction, again, your name, where you're from, and how you started from your legal practice to this business space. And just share some of the thoughts you have making that transition.
And they may need a little more than 2 minutes to do it.
No, keep us at 2 minutes.
No.
Oh, these are attorneys, so 2 minutes turns to 5 easily. So you go up to 5 minutes, Congressman White. Oh no, excuse me.
No,
I'm sorry.
Referring to my senior partner.
One, if we have any elected officials, please stand. I'm sorry, y'all. And also, Congressman Graham, thank you so much. He sponsored our breakfast today. I'm sorry, Lord, Councilman. Anyone who worked out of Independence, East Independence Plaza, please stand. Anytime.
You said anybody did what?
If you ever worked out of East Independence Plaza, well, not y'all. Now, come on, y'all wouldn't. Okay, that is amazing. Thank you so much. I'm sorry, I had to get those out. Roosevelt mask. We have to acknowledge he was a real estate agent, and he was also housed in East Independence Plaza. We have to acknowledge Mr. Roosevelt mask. Okay, I'm sorry, Attorney Ferguson, please.
Introduce yourself.
Oh. I was checking with Geraldine to see what I was supposed to do. I've done that for years. And I've always gotten an answer, it's always been right. So she said, introduce yourself. I'm James Ferguson. I was born in Asheville, North Carolina. I grew up there. And, well, I was just trying to think. I think I was born somewhere around 1942. I don't know exactly when it was. I do know that I was born. And grew up there. So, and starting early, I got involved in stuff. First grade at Catholic school. Is that my phone?
Yeah, I bring it to you.
Just turn it off.
Well, I don't know where it is.
Very
Oh, well, turn it off, Geraldine said. So anyway, I grew up in Asheville, went first grade in Catholic school because they wouldn't let me come to public school when I thought I was supposed to go, and my mom thought I was supposed to go. But mom thought I should go to school somewhere, so she got me in the Catholic school. And I got into Catholic school, and I think I passed the first grade and the other grades that I needed to get to junior high school, somewhere in Asheville, and then high school at Stevensley. And I think it was somewhere right around the end of junior high school, the beginning of high school, that I got involved in stuff. There was always something going on, and I remember threatening to go to Lee Edwards, the white high school, instead of Stevensley, the black high school. I never got there. Somebody convinced me that was not the thing to do at that time, so I didn't. But I did get involved in all of the stuff that was going on at that time, which everything was black and white, and I was black, so like all those black people in town, I got the short end of the stick. And I've been at the short end of the stick ever since then, including now. But it's a little different now, I will say that. And along the way, I've met many great people, two of whom I'm sharing with the platform today. Now, somebody said a little while ago I was supposed to introduce myself. So I think I told y'all I'm James first. All right, Jody, I'm done.
Then tell them how you got involved with the building.
Oh, that's right. Well, you know, sometimes people ask me how I got where I am, and I don't always know where that is. I say, I don't know how I got there, but Geraldine had a lot to do with it. And she still has a lot to do with it. She just told me what I was supposed to talk about. So she said I was supposed to get involved in the building. I'm going to give you a quick tour of how we got there. Back in 1967 or so, I think it was, when I came to Charlotte, I had met Chambers by chance at the Legal Defense Fund office in New York. I was in law school at Columbia at that time. Chambers was one of their foremost interns in a program that had started sometimes not before that. So in any event, that day I went down to the fund from school. I was at Columbia Law School, and went down to the fund. And it just so happened that on that same day, Chambers, who was one of the first two interns of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, he and Mary Wright Elman, maybe one or two others, we have somebody in Arkansas. But anyway, I happened to go to the fund, and it was the day that Chambers was there. And I didn't know Chambers. Of course, he didn't know me. But Jack Greenberg, who was head of the fund, introduced us at that time. And Chambers, in his inimitable way, and in his soft voice, when Jack introduced us, said, so you say your name is Ferguson, and you're going back to Asheville, North Carolina? Yeah, that's my plan. And I think by the time I got through, which was somewhere between a minute or two. So after Chambers had gotten to know me a minute or two, so he couldn't have known much more than my name at that time. And he said, well, if you're coming to North Carolina, you ought to come to Charlotte. I said, well, I plan to go to Asheville, that's my hometown. He said, well, you think about it. And he said, by the way, I need some help in my office, and I'd like for you to come join me. So, from that, you can gather how much he knew about my background, and that was what I told him within a minute or two that we talked. And here's this man, even at that time, you know, he was making quite a name for himself. I didn't know him, but I knew of him because I followed him at North Carolina Central, where we both graduated, majored in history. And I knew who Chambers was because I had a history professor. He turned out to be my favorite professor, but almost every day in class, he would find an opportunity to look at me wherever I was sitting and say, Ferguson, you're sitting in the chair where Julius Chambers used to sit. Yes, sir, Mr. Jones. At that time, I hardly knew, I don't think I even knew who Chambers was. But I knew enough about him that he sat in the chair that Carver Jones pointed out to me that I was probably sitting in the right chair. So I sat in that chair, got through class, and I had no idea at that time that I would ever meet Julius Chambers. But at that time, based on the description I'd been given by Mr. Jones, I thought that he was a great man, and he must be a big, tall man who stood out in whatever crowd he was in. And then I remember the first day I met him at the Legal Defense Fund. We just happened to be there, and he had offered me a job, and I was shocked that this was Julius Chambers, because Chambers was probably not quite tall as I was at that time. But in any event, here's this man, a perfect stranger to me, I'm a perfect stranger to him, and he offered me a job. So in those circumstances, there was not much I could say, but yeah, I'm interested, but I didn't know what I was going to do anyway. I know I was going back south to law, because that's why I went to law school. But in any event, that's how we started. Now, what I did not know at that time was that Chambers ran a one-person office with 2 rooms, one for him and one for his secretary, who was still with us, our office manager, Ella Ann. She was there trying to help Chambers out. I think they had met in undergraduate school at Central. So I arrived that day and realized that there was no office for me. But I soon realized I didn't need an office because Chambers had a closet. So I took my place in the closet, thinking that at least I had a closet of my own to work in, until I think I got either in the office or halfway in, and there was this young white fellow sitting there. His name was Adam Stein. And I came to learn that Chambers had offered me and Adam a job, an opportunity to join him, and that just as he had no idea where I would be, what office space I would have, he was equally blank about Adam. So he didn't know where either one of us was going to be. So he put us both in the same closet. I can tell you very briefly, Adam and I got to know each other very well those first 6 months. We were in a closet, and it had a table about half the size of this one. And I soon learned, I think maybe the same day, it could have been there too after, that table was my office. At least half the table was my office. The other half of the table was Adam Stein's office. So Adam and I sat across the table from each other. I think from September until about May. I don't know how many months I did, about 6 or 7 or 8, I don't know. But we got to know each other very well. And as it turns out, things worked out. There was lots of work to do. And I think a day or two after I joined Chambers at the office, he came to me and said, Ferguson, I got this case in court. It's coming up this morning, and I'm not going to be able to make it. I got to be, I think it's 1,000 or so other places. So he said, I need you to handle that case. So I'm thinking, a case, handle. It did occur to me that something, Ferguson, you need to do, but I didn't know what. But whatever it was, it either got figured out or the client told me what to do. Somebody did. And it worked out that neither the client nor I went to jail that day. So that was sort of the beginning of my involvement with Chambers. And I think, somewhere during that period of time, we figured out that, Adam and I were going to do fine across the table from each other. Well, we got to know each other very well during that period of time. And so I think that may have something to do with how I got here today. And I'm glad to be here. And I'm glad to turn the mic over to you.
Well, I don't have that kind of history. I grew up in South Carolina, outside of Columbia, went to segregated schools until they did some forced busing. They closed the African-American high school down and bused us over to the white high school. And that began my political activism. I fought the closing of the African-American high school. And I went on over to that other school and I did what I do to be a good student. And then I went to Howard University and enjoyed every minute of it. My senior year came and oh my God, I'm graduating and I'm having my time here. But it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And to this day, I remember things that I did at Howard that affect how I got to where I am. And then I left there knowing that I wanted to practice law in the South and went to Duke Law School. And at the end of my first year, I don't know who told me about the firm, because I didn't really know about the firm. But then I applied and I got invited to work during the summer between my first and second year with the firm. And I did so I came and I stayed with Carolyn White at 1715 Folklon Avenue, and got to know people in that circle, in that Macquarie Heights community while I was here. And then I always thought I was going to go back to South Carolina and do civil rights work, and I thought I was going to do it through legal services, which until Ronald Reagan got elected and they changed the charter for legal services, it did class action work in housing and discrimination and some of everything else, but they were then limited to do landlord-tenant consumer work and domestic work. I did 6 months down there, and in that 6 months, 3 clients of mine were killed in violent domestic issues, and I was a student member of the North Carolina Association of Black Lawyers while I was at Duke. There were only 5 black students at Duke, so we collected among us with the black students at UNC and at North Carolina Central. So they had an October meeting every year, and so I said, I'm going to the October meeting with the black lawyers, people I know. And got there, and Chambers said, what you doing? I said, I'm down in legal service, but come talk to me. I think I've got something for you to do. And so by December 31st, 1982, I was officially a member of the firm and have been with the firm since then. I do primarily employment work. I inherited some of Mel's cases when he went off to Congress, including a lot of his business cases. And I still have some of those people as clients as they have grown over time. I represent a lot of the churches that he represented now. And so the building was there when I got there as a student. I heard about the older offices, the one that got burned, and then when they were at the big hotel, White House Inn. So I don't know the history of the development of the building except what I've been told and read. I didn't live through that the way these two did. But that's it. That's my involvement in the building. I had a nice office, could see downtown. Mel left, I moved into his office, got to see another part of downtown. But it was the second tallest building owned by black people in the state of North Carolina, second only to the North Carolina Mutual Building in Durham.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Mel White. I'm always fascinated to be on a panel with my 2 former law partners because I always learn something about them that you practice with people regularly, but you never really learn about their history. And so I'm always fascinated to be on a panel with former law partners because I'm constantly learning about them, stuff that I didn't know. I want to tell you a little bit about my history. I was born right here in Mecklenburg County, out on the other side of the airport in a little community called Dixie. And I attended the public schools of Charlotte Mecklenburg, Plato Price School. There was a 1 through 12 school, segregated, of course, until I got to the 11th grade, and the school board sent half of the high school students from Plato Price to West Charlotte, and the other half to York Road down on the south end of Charlotte. And so I ended up at York Road and graduated from York Road High School in 1963. And then I went on to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and graduated in 1967, and went on to Yale University Law School and graduated in 1970. And Julius Chambers offered me a job. Chambers and Fergie offered me a job in 1970 when I was coming out of law school, and I turned them down because I wanted to practice business law primarily. And at that time, the definition of civil rights didn't necessarily include business development. But 1 year later, we got into a discussion and decided that it was time to really evolve the definition of what was stereotypically thought of as civil rights law and add an economic development component to it, and a business component to it, and an estate planning component to it, because people that the law firm was representing to get better jobs, employment discrimination cases, were getting better jobs, and they needed those kinds of services. So I entered the firm during an era when we were redefining what was stereotypical civil rights law. The development of an office building was not necessarily in that definition. So I want to step back one step and take you through that so that you'll understand how this really happened. So I'm going to read one paragraph from a book that I have written now that I'm in the process of trying to get published. When it is published, you'll start to understand the various layers of East Independence Plaza, the building that we owned. Much the same way you'll have to sift through what Kendrick Lamar did at halftime, because there are multiple layers to this. But this is the first layer of it. And I want you to understand this because you have to understand the history of why this building was developed. I'm reading now from a section in my book called Wake Up Call. Around 5 a.m. on February 4, 1971, a loud ring on the landline at the house my wife and I had agreed to rent from my cousin in Charlotte jolted me awake. It was Fergie calling to tell me that the law firm's office had been firebombed in the middle of the night, and that I should plan to report to my first official day of work back in North Carolina, dressed in old clothes suitable for recovery work instead of in a suit. I might have considered Fergie's call a form of fraternity hazing used to indoctrinate new lawyers joining the Chambers, Stein, Ferguson, and Lanning law firm, except for the controlled terror I sensed in Fergie's voice and my knowledge that Julius Chambers' home and car had been firebombed before. Fergie's call clearly was not law firm hazing. It was my rude notice that a racial reckoning was in progress in North Carolina, just as racial reckonings were taking place everywhere else that I had considered taking up residence to practice law. Fergie's wake-up call was confirmation that my decision to practice business law in a civil rights law firm in Charlotte also represented a commitment to play a part in the reckoning. As Julius Chambers had assured me, there was serious work to be done right here at home. That's one paragraph that sets the framework for why this building was ultimately developed. Well, it turned out that a group of black doctors led by Julius's brother, Kenneth Chambers, had been talking to Chambers about developing a small medical office. But when the office got firebombed, then we joined with them, and expanded the vision and ended up building what the Charlotte Observer described as the largest commercial building development that had ever been developed in the southeastern United States. 7 stories, 100,000 square feet of office space, at a cost of over $4 million, which was a lot of money at that time. This is how adversity starts, and you got to understand that one layer is the violence, and a second layer is the reaction to violence, because you're not going to stop us. We're just not. You're not going to intimidate Julius Chambers, and we're going to go and reclaim some land that's been taken. All the land in Brooklyn had been taken from black people, right? So when I showed up at the bid and said, "Hey, if we don't win this bid, Julius Chambers gonna file a lawsuit against your asses," right? And that's how we ended up getting the property. 6 was a property which ultimately became the Walton Plaza. That's what people refer to it as now. Really ought to be the Chambers Plaza, because this was all in response to adversity and the notion that some guy 1 year out of law school could be developing the largest office building that black people had ever owned in southeastern United States it just blew my mind, just like it blew Fergie's mind that Chambers was saying to him, go to court today and handle this case, because we got baptized by fire. That's the way we practice law. We got baptized by fire. And the development of this building was, for me and for the lawyers in the firm, and for black doctors and for black people, baptism by fire, because we weren't going to get any help from people downtown. And so it became the monument for resistance and progress, and every layer that you could think of that Kendrick Lamar would describe to you in his visuals and his music, this building became for the city of Charlotte. And I'm just happy to have been in the right place or maybe in the wrong place at the wrong time, but Fergie calling me the very first day that I turned up back in Charlotte to practice law. That's how this happened. Man.
Y'all realize how legendary this is. This is, also for context, Adam Stein is the father of our governor, Josh Stein.
Yes, he is.
And if you need help sifting through Kendrick Lamar, apparently Mr. Kent Coons is an expert, so please connect with him. We got our first question from Dr. Blanche Penn.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I gotta stand right here because I gotta see Fergie. Okay. Ferguson and Chambers. Mr. Ferguson called me and he said, I wanted you to be on the stand because I used to come to a Tuesday morning forum. And I said, on the stand for what? Because I was complaining from school about my children. And so they drilled me, and I did that. My son, if you go Google his name, Raphael Penn, he was one of the plaintiffs versus whoever it was. And so that's how I got to know these guys. And I tell you, Mel Watts, I know you went to Plato Price. That's where I went to. Yeah. Okay, well, right. You Plato Price? All right. So my question is to you, that's just a little bit of my history. Mr. Fergie, I want to know, because this is usually my dancing partner at his club. And I always say, Fergie, are you ready? So Fergie, please stand so we can do our quick short dance. Ready? Come on, Fergie. Go, Fergie. Go, Fergie. Go, give us a little music. Go, Fergie.
Go Fergie, music, go Fergie, go Fergie, go Fergie, go Fergie.
I just wanted to see if he could still dance. Thank you.
All right. Like a scene from a Tyler Perry movie just happened. We have a question from Mr. King Cruz.
I like those kind of questions. That's a hell of a question, then. Can you dance?
And made him show up. Stand up, Fergie. All right.
I turned it off because it was bouncing off the Ken's getting ready to ask you a question.
For the sake of full disclosure, I recall sitting at someone's restaurant to talk about a 25th anniversary celebration of the law firm. We never got around to doing that, but we did have that conversation. And then also, full disclosure, Mel Watt, remember you were my attorney in Channel 55, and also in the purchase of the Excelsior Club. So we go way back. I also recall covering that strip of land where you ultimately built that building when it was previously a farmer's market, and also the campsite for the Red Hornet Mayday tribe, which Julius Chambers represented in a lawsuit against the Secret Service. My question to each of you is, as you proceeded and ultimately gained that national recognition with the court-ordered busing, what impact did that have in terms of how you proceeded from then forward in your civil rights litigation? Were people calling you all from all over the country wanting you to represent them?
Well, I thank you for mentioning that, Ken, because I'd almost forgotten about the fact that we did some things that some people remember. But it's just like Mel was saying a minute ago, a lot of what we did was sort of what my wife used to call organic. That is, you just do what you feel. There was very little planning that went on. But fortunately, you know, there were great people that we got to know. I mean, Chambers was one of the greatest people I've ever known, including Adam Stein. And there was a lawyer who became a judge here, Jim Lanning. It was the four of us, and we had no idea what we were doing, and we had no idea where we were going, nor how we were going to get there. But we were believers. We believed that we could do it. And so it's not like there was a plan or a blueprint or map or guide or anything, but there was some fire in us somewhere, and it all came together. And I don't want to reveal too much yet and tell everybody we didn't know what we were doing. But since we didn't, it's going to come out anyway. We didn't know what we were doing, but whatever we were doing, we wanted to be the best at it.
That's true.
And we worked on that. And I'm still working on it. We may get there one day.
I'll just add this. I don't think history will ever understand or appreciate the impact that Julius Chambers had on the city and on the state. He was like a magnet, attracting people like Fergie and me and Geraldine, but a lot of the black physicians in specialties in Charlotte came to Charlotte because of Julius Chambers. And Julius Chambers would always make this little quiet pitch to people that he made to me and talked me into coming back to Charlotte. Because when I left and went north, I never had any intention of ever coming back to Charlotte. It was Julius Chambers that said to me, there's work to be done right here in your hometown, and you can have an impact and grow with it. So Chambers is like a magnet. he became, I mean, if anything that happened anywhere in North Carolina, people wanted to be represented by Julius Chambers. And he was that good at the practice of law, but the kinds of things that he attracted, you would never, ever imagine. When Stevie Wonder, for example, you'll have to read the book to get the full description of this. Stevie Wonder, traveling from Greenville, South Carolina to Durham, North Carolina for his next performance, got driven into the back of a logging truck in Salisbury. And some guy from Motown shows up at the airport in Greensboro and says, "Who's the best black lawyer in North Carolina?" And a skycap says to him, "You got to go see Julius Chambers." And I end up representing representing Stevie Wonder all the way through his personal injury case to settlement because of that. People discriminated against in every part of the state wanted Julius Chambers to be their lawyer. Black business people with ideas like the ones that we got described as people were introducing themselves, wanted to be represented by Julius Chambers, and when I got to the law firm, Julius Chambers would sit me beside him in a room and talk to these people, and then all of a sudden he'd be gone and disappear, and he would say, "This is our business lawyer," right? He did that with the black doctors whose idea was to develop a small office building. He says, "I'm turning this over to Mel Watt. He's our business lawyer, and he's going to decide how big this project can be, where it ought to be built, how to get it financed." But everybody was looking to Julius Chambers, and then at some point they started saying, "Okay, well, Julius ain't gonna be in the room for 2 minutes anyway, he just might well call Mel Watt," right? This was Julius Chambers's, I mean, nobody is ever going to appreciate the impact that Julius Chambers had on this state and this city. It was Julius Chambers that took me to Soul City in the middle of the night, out in on a country dirt road, and introduced me to Harvey Gantt. Who would have ever thought I would manage campaigns for Harvey Gantt, city council, mayor of Charlotte, United States Senate against Jesse Helms, all because Julius Chambers introduced me to Harvey Gantt. There's no way to make this stuff up. Fergie says, yes, it was organic, right? But Julius Chambers was our hero. He was and to the extent that people don't understand this in this room, you need to understand the history of Julius Chambers, because this ain't about either of us up here, except that we were clones basically of Julius Chambers.
So if I may, I echo these sentiments about Chambers, and I really, to a certain extent, even though I was not there, take some issue with Fergie saying they didn't know what they were doing. He was speaking lightly there, because Chambers, I think, always had a vision. And I want to tell you a story. No lawyer was too young to be in a meeting with Chambers and whatever he was thinking about. Frank Emery was at the firm for a while, and one Sunday afternoon, Chambers calls a meeting of ministers, and y'all might have been there too, in the conference room up on the 7th floor. because he wanted to talk to them about developing a shopping area up 77, because he said that's where a whole lot of black people were, and they shouldn't have to go down to South Park all the way over to Eastland, that there was business opportunity up there, and they ought to be looking at that and developing that. And the ministers were like, ooh, that's a whole lot of that. What you talking about bringing Saks Fifth Avenue and all of that stuff down here to Charlotte and Chambers? I'm telling you, this is the early 80s. And Frank and I left the room and said, you know, if these ministers had just gotten on board, Chambers would be trying to figure out how to develop a mall. Well, now, decades later, you got North Lake Mall, but that's exactly what Chambers was talking about back in the 80s. He had vision. And John Wallace, who was a lawyer who worked with us, said that with the employment stuff, when Title VII was passed, Chambers methodically would look at the industries and say, okay, that's trucking, they ain't gonna, okay, we need to sue them. We need, no, seriously, and that was a plan. I mean, that was, here's a statute, how do we make the statute work, and how do we benefit people who are applying for these jobs, or getting them and not getting promotions, or not getting paid equally. And I think that Chambers always thought economics. You know, a lot of people think civil rights and they just think about equal opportunity and racism. But even Dr. King, you know, we've always thought about economic development. And even though this building was the largest building in the Southeast, it was not the first time that black people and black people here in Charlotte had thought collectively to join forces to own some real property. You know, there was a Dale Brook building, it's still over on Beatties Ford Road. The building on Brevard Street, the MI Company building established in 1922, which had in it doctors and accountants, and I don't know if any lawyers practiced out of there or not.
Before my time.
All right, yeah. But you know, in this building, doctors predominated the individual tenants, but it was a full-service business building. The bank was there, the pharmacy was there, the physical therapists were there. It housed Planned Parenthood, it housed legal services, it had accountants, had real estate, had kin. So it had a lot. It was, at some point, when I came to Charlotte, they were calling it the Black Professional Building.
Yeah, right.
Because it was, that's what it was, a whole bunch of black. And it had Jesse Irby in there, I tell you, that was a beauty salon like none other. I've never seen a beauty shop like that before in my life. But it was there, and everybody felt that they owned a part of that building. Now, I think Mel should tell you why we no longer own the building. Or should I tell you? Well, at some point, you know, the county commissioners were looking for a site for a new jail. And they considered several places. Yeah, you were gone by then.
Yeah, I was gone by then.
They considered several places. And so there was the threat of eminent domain. And you know, that's when the city or government agency decides that it wants a property, and then they go and they take it, and there's an appraisal process for it, and they take the highest bid. Well, I think that the building, now Mel does know this, it was established as an LLC, if I'm not mistaken. 40 members, 40 or so members, predominantly black, one or two non-black people in it, met, and they made the decision in the threat of this eminent domain, whether they should sell it and get the highest market price for it. And I think that's what they did, rather than succumb to the eminent domain. It was sold, I think, to the county for probably at a price higher than it could have gotten through that eminent domain process. And then, you know, it became the Bob Walton building, and a lot of social services were there. And then in 2023, it was demolished to make room for this new housing project that is supposed to come along. But that building was not, as you know, wasn't the only professional building. There are other Black professionals have joined together. The 1230 West Moorhead, you had your office in that building when you were in Congress.
Darrell Williams.
Darrell Williams' building and project. So, the age.
Was I in Congress?
So I say that to say, even though the building is not there, we do still continue to see that kind of interest and collective activity. A lot of African Americans now are kind of doing their own thing, they build their own restaurants or what have you, but times might show us over time that collective economic activity is of benefit to us. And I'm going to jump a little bit, if you don't mind me saying this. Out of Mel's work for economic development and business work was representing a lot of churches and businesses. And I just want to talk about some of what the churches did also as this economic development thing. For those of you who are Presbyterian, you know this organization called the Catawba Economic Development Association. It was a collective of Presbyterian churches. That was a Black Presbyterian church. It later merged with Presbyterian USA, but they kept their 501c3 Catawba Economic Development Association. They built houses, financed the houses, and were a path to home ownership for, I think, 40 people. And that number might be wrong, but a lot of them are in Reartown. They also developed senior living back in the early 80s called Sharon Manor. Is located at 4703 North Sharon Avenue. 39 spaces, all ground level. They later sold that to an operation out of Greensboro. But that was, I thought, just when I worked with them, with Dr. N.A. Smith, I just thought this is marvelous. And now, today, you see churches again building affordable housing. The Park Church has it, St. Mark Baptist Church has it, Little Rock AME Zion just finished theirs, and Mount Moriah in Matthews, small church in Matthews, North Carolina, is also engaged.
St. Paul?
St. Paul, didn't I say St. Paul? I meant to. St. Paul was the first one of the new ones out of the ground.
Mayfield?
And Mayfield just finished theirs. So I think that's, again, the collective action, showing some economic development and showing that we can meet a community need. So I would tell you to consider that, and not to forget the United House of Prayer. When they bought the restaurant, bought the Madison, or is it the McCullough House?
The old McDonald's.
This old McDonald's, is it the Madison?
Madison.
So, that's, I think, once you see successful economic development, it encourages other people to do it as well. And I just give Mel a whole lot of credit for that, because I'm working on some development project with one of your former clients, and it is a process. It's work, and people have done it, and we should encourage people to do it again.
Man, this is so legendary. I can't stop smiling. Gary. I'm sorry, Gary. Miss Carlinia Ivory, please. Absolutely. Me too.
I'll let her go for me.
No, I raised my hand before you did.
Either way, you got it before me, Miss Carlinia. No problem.
Good morning. The three of you, thank you. Thank you for everything that you have done. You're talking about legends. I'm probably much younger, but.
Okay.
But again, thank you. And even I think about that doctor's building, which every doctor, African-American doctor, had an opportunity to have somewhere to have an office. That, it was just phenomenal. You could go, it was like one stop. And Mel, thank you, and thank all of you for what you did with that. I think of Julius Chambers and when his house was bombed, and Dr. Hawkins' house was bombed, and all of that, and the way that he endured that. And if it wasn't for your firm, people don't know that you guys fought, because even in 1967, there were no African Americans playing in the Shrine Bowl. And it was because of Julius Chambers that happened. There are just so many things.
Wait, who was it? Who was that first person?
It was my late husband, Titus Ivory. It should have been.
Should have been Little.
What's his name? Jimmy Lee.
Jimmy Lee Kirkpatrick.
Kirkpatrick, who ended up at Michigan, but he was denied that. And then Julius and Julius and Dr. Hawkins and a couple others got together. But what I want to do is ask Mel about an individual. Mel, you might have worked, and I had an opportunity to work with you on some of those campaigns, but the person behind the scenes was none other than Don Baker. Can you talk a little bit about Don Baker?
I wish I'd brought with me the chapter on Don Baker. I could read, because Don is Don Baker was the unsung hero of all of our campaigns, dating back all the way to Harvey Gantt's first campaign for city council, and all the way through the campaign against Jesse Helms in 1990, and then he became the field director of my campaigns when I ran for Congress, all the way up until his death in 2000. I can't remember when it was, 15, I think it was. Here's a guy who, much like Julius Chambers, was just a soft-spoken, just a wonderful person who could relate to people. And he understood every precinct, black precinct leader in Charlotte-Mecklenburg. And then he started to understand every precinct leader and leader in other parts of the state when we managed Harvey Gantt's campaign for the United States Senate. And so neither Harvey nor I could have ever survived in politics without Don Baker. And he's just one of those people that probably few people will write about in a book, although he'll be prominent in mine. You can be assured. So.
All right.
So I have a question. A lot of the regulars who come here know that I'm a proud resident of McCrory Heights, and I wanted to know what were your interactions with some of those lawyers or attorneys that were before you, the Charles Bells, Thomas Weish, Avon. How was the engagement between your generation and their generation of attorneys?
I'm going to say I'm a young person, but I had the pleasure of knowing Charlie Bell, and we laughed because everybody had a laugh about Charlie Bell. But Charlie Bell had a case that went to the United States Supreme Court that where he represented a black man who had been falsely accused of murder here, went through the state courts, went through habeas corpus, and ultimately the man was free. And he was an innocent person who had been sentenced to death. He was assisted in that case by Calvin Brown Charlie Bell and, oh God, was it Nibbins? Started the case and did it through the trial level, but Calvin Brown came in and helped them with the appeals. And it was, you know, a wonderful thing to have known Calvin Brown. I considered him a good friend. He was a comedian. His son is a professional comedian, and he got it from his daddy. Thomas White was a legal services lawyer who lived down the street. The Whites, you know, were prominent people, lived down the street on Oak Lawn. The first Black person to practice law in Mecklenburg County was somebody named John S. Leary. Now, he practiced so long ago that I don't think even Chambers got to know him. Because, were you the 6th Black lawyer to come to Charlotte?
7th.
The 7th. Okay.
Well, one of the things, you know, we're talking about Chambers a lot because we're all beholden to him, we're all alive. And Chambers was never about himself. And one of the small things some would say that he did was that when Chambers was doing desegregation cases all over North Carolina and filing briefs and making change and making a difference, one of the things he always did that very few people who did not work with him know is that when Chambers did a case in some small out-of-the-way place in eastern North Carolina, and that case wound up in court, whether it was the U.S. District Court or the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court of the United States. When Chambers wrote briefs and signed his briefs, he always included in the signatories to the brief the local Black lawyers where the case came from. Lawyers that nobody knew and lawyers that people didn't necessarily regard as civil rights lawyers, but it was always the local Black lawyer's name would be on a brief, whether it was a brief in the Supreme Court, the Fourth Circuit, or wherever. So Chambers was about inclusion. He was about helping folks be who they are and helping us as a community know who was helping us as a community. And always the local Black lawyers were often involved in those cases. So if you go back and look at all the briefs that Chambers ever did, you will find the name of a lawyer you never heard of, and that was the local lawyer in that community. So that's just who he was, and that's what he did. And those of us who had joined him learned that, and we found ourselves, without even thinking through what I just said, how we got there. But that's what we did, and that's what Chambers was all about, not Chambers, but community.
Good morning. I know that we are trying to shorten our questions and our answers, but related to Don Baker, Mel, I do remember you and Don Baker traveling the state promoting candidates for Superior Court, and that was a big deal. My question is, have the folk with Brooklyn Village, the new developers, have any of them reached out to you about what might be placed there historically?
Yes and no at the same time. I actually knew Peoples, the CEO of the development group, from Washington, because he had been on the board of the Black Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. So when I came back to, when I retired back from Washington back to North Carolina, Ted Follett and I had some extensive dealings with them, trying to get the percentage of affordable housing that was to be built back in the Brooklyn neighborhood from 10% up to 20%, what we thought was a modest demand. I am elated that finally, after all of this time, seems like it may happen. But it probably should have happened 2 or 3 years ago, before interest rates went up and the economy and housing costs got so big. But I'm glad to see that we now have the prospect that on the very site that East Independence Plaza was located and demolished will be 250 units of affordable housing. That's their proposal and their plan that was just considered by the county commission at last week's county commission meeting. So I think it's incumbent on all of us in this room to keep the pressure on to make sure that that happens, because that will then establish not the historical connection with the development of East Independence Plaza, as it should. And it will be an opportunity to restore Black ownership and Black people back into Brooklyn, because Brooklyn was owned by Black people, right? That was our community, even before, well, I guess I shouldn't say even before West Charlotte, because West Charlotte and Second Ward used to fight each other on the square every year at football time, right? West Charlotte on one side, Second Ward in Brooklyn on the other side of Charlotte. So, but they just stole, the city and the county and white people just stole Brooklyn. And we were the first with East Independence Plaza to restore some ownership back into that neighborhood. And we need to make sure that this group continues to restore some Blackness back into Brooklyn.
Man, all right, y'all, I hate to do this, but lightning round. 30 seconds, I gotta enforce the rules. 30 seconds for questions, please. A minute for responses. All right, Gary. And specify who you want your question to be.
Well, my question will be for all. I say, as advanced high school graduate, you make me extremely proud of the name change they went through. In 1999 to 2000, we had a lawsuit that changed the course of what CMS is right now, Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools. What do you see being the necessary fix to bring CMS back to an equitable foundation that it had around that same time frame compared to where it's at right now? Well, y'all should have got me earlier.
Well, I think the community has to demand it. Court system is not going to be the all-in-all answer, but I think parents have to demand that the schools educate all of their children.
Oh, there you go.
Well, I don't even know how to respond to this in
just go.
I'm just gonna say this.
Take all your time.
All of this goes back to housing patterns. After we developed East Independence Plaza, the bulk of my business practice became real estate, but representing people who were buying homes, right? And realtors were directing Black people to the west side, and the city was becoming more and more segregated. So part of this is starting to develop itself. I mean, I hear people complain about gentrification, but part of the solution to this problem is the integration, desegregation of neighborhoods, and that will lead to gentrification. But it's a long time process, because segregation and the impact of segregation has defined so much of education, segregated housing, racial attitudes, it's just such a multi-layered problem to work through.
So, my boss just told me, Ms. Laura McClay, I want to respect each panelist's time. However, we have been extended the room until 10:30. If you all are able to stay, we would love that. If you have to leave, we totally understand. Questions still 30 seconds, responses. Let's do 2 minutes.
I'm good, because I'm retired. Geraldine's the only one that's still working.
And time is money. I get it. Attorney Sumter, if you have to leave, I will escort you out personally. All right, Dr. Watson.
Thank you all for your resiliency.
We need you for it. So we have a streaming audience that we'll need to hear you.
That's okay. Yeah, I want to just say thank you all for your resiliency that you guys displayed on this journey. You know, sometimes in the political climate that we're dealing with right now, we tend to focus on the challenges. What opportunities do you guys see that we should be focusing on during this time, to capitalize on versus focusing solely on the challenges, in particular economic?
Your question is what opportunities exist for us in this repressive, oppressive climate? Well, I think that what we are seeing now is just a repeat of what they did. First, when Woodrow Wilson went in and segregated the federal workforce. And so, you know, we often think that Sherman gave us 40 acres and a mule. I want you to know that all Sherman did was issue an order that said 400,000 acres along the South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida coast was to be divided by among 18,000 former enslaved families, not people, 18,000 families. Now you do the math, you don't get 40 acres. And in fact, his order said no plot was to be more than 40 acres, and it did not give them ownership. It only gave them the right to possess the property. Some of you know about the apartheid land deals in South Africa where black people could go to the homelands and they could build a house on it, but they couldn't own it. That's what Sherman gave you, and he never gave you a damn mule. That's what they gave white people when they did the westward migration. They didn't give you a mule. So please, just know, just get that part right. In any event, that was in January of 1865. By the end of 1865, Andrew Johnson had repealed all of that and had, you know this word, pardoned the former Confederate soldiers and restored their land to them. So what happened after that? Oh, we were in a state of funk for a while. But out of that repression, I think like the phoenix, we rose because we figured out what we had to do to survive. You see, people who have been on high perches hurt more when they fall. We know how to deal on the ground level. So I think we just continue to do collective action, figure out who our real friends are, do some collaborations with them, and then move forward. I mean, you know, if you're out on the street and you're trying to find shelter, you're going to find some shelter somehow. You know, we people, we know how to make a way out of no way. So this is big time, make a way out of no way. And all of this isolationism that we do once there's some upward mobility, some of that, all of the DEI stuff is phasing out or overturned, not only in schools, but in employment and everywhere else. So I think it's going to give us the opportunity to look at ourselves as people, as our collective selves, our sisters and brothers. We'll get you back to some basics. You do your own economics, you buy it from yourself. I hear there's Target, they're boycotting Target and Walmart and all of that stuff, and now the Target shareholders are upset because they said nobody told us what was going to happen with this DEI stuff. So, it's an interesting time that you're in. I also think that we have to not just think that we as Black people in America are in this struggle by ourselves. This super rise of right-wing thinking exists all over the world. And so we will have to figure out how we make those international connections and movements, because the civil rights movement also had an international component to it.
Amen. Bars. We have Commissioner Townsend Ingram.
Good morning. First, I want to say what a privilege and honor it is to just simply be in the room with you and listen to this. I quite frankly think that we need a Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools history course, but I digress, that would teach all of what you just told us, some of what you just told us. So just to reiterate on what Congressman Watts said, yes, Brooklyn will be done. We're going to make it a priority. 250 affordable home units, and most importantly, into perpetuity for those houses. Those units will be affordable 99 years. That's what the contract says. You perfectly keyed up the question that I have been sitting here asking, which is that we are now in a time that you all have experienced, but we don't understand it. We don't know it. We've taken things for granted. Being intentional about building economic development, because that is one of the county's priorities as well. How do we, as far as the government and privately, how can we be intentional? Like, for instance, the West Side Community Land Trust. Is that the way to go? Can you give us some direction as to what would be our options? What should we do now to be intentional about the economic development piece?
So I think there's more than one way to skin the cat. There isn't a one model. There can be many models, and that land trusts are fine, LLCs are fine, but if you have a particular issue, then you need to look at the models that would address that best. At one point, going back into some Black political theory here, W.B. Du Bois had the Talented 10 program, and that meant something, but that kind of fell by the wayside. I mean, it served a purpose, because he said, if we can't educate everybody, let's get our 10 best and then develop. I don't think that's the kind of model that we're going to be going after anymore.
I think that's the only mic that's working.
No, it works. You just turn it on. But you have to turn one off.
One of the things that one of our influential people said some years ago, and he's not necessarily my favorite person, but people choose between W.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington, and I'm among those who choose W.B. But there is one thing that Booker T. said that has great implications, and we don't think about it, because we're always thinking, what is the next level? What is the next step? What is the next project? How do we get from here to that? All of those things. But one of the things Booker T. said that to me uttered and spouted some wisdom was, cast down your buckets where you are. And it's that simple. So, we always have to dream, we always have to build, and we always have to be looking. at the next step, but we also have to recognize where we are. And wherever we are, there's opportunity there. But the key to it is wherever you are and whatever bucket you have, try to the extent that you can, and we all have to do this, is to look at it as something beyond ourselves and involve someone else in it, and understand that although we have built a great community nationwide from where we once were, we're still involved in building community. So when you cast down your buckets where you are, you're looking at who's right there with you and finding a way to include them in what you do, because we're still, although we made tremendous progress over the years, we're still in this together. So we have to always think about what impact, that I'm doing something, what impact will that have on the rest of my people? So we have to continue to think in terms of not just ourselves, but others who will be affected by whatever we do.
Can I do one quick thing? So a lot of us still own land. Black people in the South, I'm not talking about these lots in cities, but I'm talking about the property your grandmama had out in the county somewhere. Instead of thinking about when can I sell this to a developer, talk to some black people about farming. The food production, some of us are trying to be particular about what we eat. So, 2 or 3 acres, you can do a lot of food production. And, it's not all like it was back in the days of slavery. Things have changed. You can do it yourself, really.
Like not in the days of slavery. We just got better in the farming space, thanks. Well, a year ago. So yeah, you can find some money in it now, just like white folks. All right, Jay Hill.
Yes, my name is Jay Hill. My question is for the whole panel. Could you talk about when Mr. Chambers would edify you in a way that may have been like very impressive, but also like what would be your reaction when he would put you on these huge cases like immediately as soon as you got into the front?
I got to answer this one. I'm sorry. Great question. And I'll quickly tell you just one experience that I had. Julius Chambers sent me to Lumberton, North Carolina, to represent a bunch of Native Americans who had been charged with assaulting officers, resisting arrest, parading with dangerous weapons. And I got down there, and in my interviews, I found out that these Native Americans had been parading with spears and tomahawks and things. They didn't have any guns. And what was shocking to me was that I found out that they were demonstrating because they didn't want their children to go to school with black kids, right? They were demonstrating against having their kids go to school with black kids. So after I escaped the Native American meeting way down off the road by myself and saying, damn, I might not ever come out of here alive. I jumped in my car and raced back to Charlotte, and I stormed into Chambers' office, and I said, Chambers, why in the world would you send me to Lumberton, North Carolina, to represent people who were demonstrating against going to school with black people? Julius Chambers never even looked up from his desk. He just said, don't you believe in the First Amendment? I've been in the law school 3 years. I've taken constitutional law from Boris Bitker and Robert Bork, the guy that, it's the first time that I ever understood what the First Amendment was. I couldn't understand why this civil rights law firm could represent the Ku Klux Klan when they paraded in Greensboro. Julius was a strong believer in the Constitution. The First Amendment, it ain't about protecting the rights of only people that you agree with. It's about protecting the rights of everybody. It's a lesson that I have never, ever forgotten in my life.
I'm sorry. Was there community backlash? Like if if they heard about the law firm protecting someone with a different perspective, as I'm thinking of cancel culture, what it is today.
No. I mean, we weren't going to be canceled by anybody. We believe in the Constitution. We believe in equality. We believe in the First Amendment. We believe in what those white people who wrote this Constitution to protect themselves. It ought to apply to all of us, to us too. Every single one, every single word, we want it applied to us, right? So no, we ain't worried about cancel culture.
Carrie.
My name is Carrie Nelson. Thank you all for being here. It's a privilege. I've heard so much about you all, and I'm learning so much every day. My question is regarding West Charlotte High School. After the Swan decision, when West Charlotte became a model in the country for integration of schools. But from what I understand, that would not have happened without the business community deciding to send their children, their white children, to West Charlotte. Can any of you speak to how that came about?
I'm going to talk about it. I don't know whether I'm going to be on point or not. The background is that, West Charlotte, along with Sycamore, those two high schools were sort of beacons in the African American community.
Excuse me, can we interrupt you? We need to say goodbye.
We need to say goodbye to Geraldine.
Yes, I'm sorry. Attorney Ferguson.
Geraldine?
Geraldine has the, excuse me. Attorney Sumter has to go, she has to work.
Somebody
so thank you so much.
She got it.
We appreciate it. Still a practicing attorney at the law firm, so please, if you want to contact, are you taking more clients?
They can call me, I'll let them know if I can help them.
Get your money together first. But thank you so much, Attorney Sumter. We'll see. All right, my apologies, Attorney Ferguson.
Well, I'm not sure what I was about to say, so maybe I'll not say it. But no, I mean, the thought that always occurs to me is that no matter what we do individually, no matter what successes we have, we've had quite a few successes over the years, many of them recently in politics and economics and all of that. The whole idea is understanding that what we do, although we all want to have a better life for ourselves and our families, but we're still in a period in this country that unless we move forward as a people and move our people forward, then we don't really move forward ourselves, because we find ourselves out on the ledge and no one else is there but us. So we have to continue to think community and continue to understand that we got to be lifting as we rise. So we always got to remember that whatever accomplishments we made, no matter how large, no matter how small, we've got a whole race of people, and we do have to continue to think in terms of race, because none of us is going to get very far alone if we don't bring our whole community with us. So we have to continue to think community in
relate that back to your West Charlotte question, because a lot of us, when we talk about community, we don't think of it. We think of it as a black community. We are one community, and West Charlotte High School was one example of how, if we allow ourselves to view it in that way, we advantage our whole city, our own communities. Both of my kids graduated from West Charlotte High School. Fergie's kids graduated from West Charlotte. But there were a bunch of white students who were bused across town to West Charlotte High School. And we can't ever start being so insulated that we start thinking of community only as the black community. Now I'm going to drop a bomb here for a second, because there are people in the audience who are probably going to think I'm crazy when I say this. The concerns we have about gentrification and white people moving into the black community, we really got to take a different kind of look at it. I remember when one of the city council people called and asked me to come and speak to a community group because he or she, I'm not going to identify who that person was worried about gentrifying their community. I said, well, you need to know what I will say before I come. I said, the first course I ever took in economics taught me that when you have 100 of something and 10 people want it, the price goes down. When you have 100 of something and 200 people want it, the price goes up. And the economics of the black community has been that you've got 10 people and you got 100 houses, and those 10 people are trying to get over to Southeast Charlotte because the values are going to go up. So the only way you're going to get values to go up in the black community is if there's demand coming toward our communities. Now, am I concerned that that has economic implications for our communities? You can bet your life I am. But there are ways to insulate our communities from that impact. Land banking, one of them. You heard discussion about that. But I suggested to that person who was on either the city council or the county commission, I won't tell you which one, that one way to insulate our communities is to give people who are already residents there tax breaks. Property taxes going up is what's causing people to have to sell their property in the black community, right? So if you as a county commissioner or a city council member passed something that insulated the people in the black community against property tax increases, you would protect them from the impact of gentrification, which is the increase in value of homes in the black community. And you would help to solve the school problem, desegregation problem. Moving out of our community is not an answer for us. Protecting our community and allowing other people to move into it has a valuable impact on our community. So I've been doing this for a long time, and this is a long time process, but we can't start thinking of ourselves as segregated just because white folks decided we were segregated at one point, right? We are a community of people, black and white and Native American and Asian, and all of us, we got to think of ourselves as one community.
All right, we have young Kennedy.
I noticed in you all's introduction, y'all briefly talked about segregation during schooling. My question is, how would you say historical hardships shaped your faith throughout your career?
I would say it again.
How would you say historical hardships shaped your faith throughout your career and throughout the building?
I'm sorry, I missed the center word in that sentence.
Historical hardships and how they shaped your faith.
Oh, jeez. You're asking a question of a person who was born in a house with no running water, no electricity, no inside plumbing, and you want to know how hardship has impacted my life. You know, what Geraldine says, we've been fighting this we know how to fight. So when people started calling me after the last election saying, what country are you moving to? My response to them, hell, honey, I ain't going nowhere. This is my country. And nobody's going to force me out of my country. You know, we've been through this before. So we know that's how hardship has impacted me, because I know that I can survive. If I had to, I'd go back and live without electricity. I'd live without running water. I'd go out to the toilet outside. There's no other way to describe it. I mean, you know, and it comes at you every day. Young lady, it will come at you every day, and you are going to have to fight it every day. So you just need to hunker down and learn to survive and learn to fight.
And I'll just add on to that. Opportunity actually comes along with adversity. So whenever there's a huge challenge and you think all is lost, then you think about what the devil said he was when he was getting kicked out of heaven. What though the field be lost, all is not lost. So there's always something there that is not lost, and there's something that you can identify that can take you forward, and you just have to see it. And sometimes it's difficult to see because there's so much adversity. You begin to think all there is adversity. But adversity, in many ways, is always opportunity. You just have to see it, and you have to act on it. I know that's very general, but try it and you'll see that it's true.
Now, before we go to Danye, we have a question from one of our online viewers, Ms. Nancy Stroud. Nancy asks, how did they get the funding during that time to finance such a bold building project of that magnitude? It's tough for people of color today.
Well, I ran the numbers, and if economics had worked like it was supposed to, this building would have been as successful as the buildings uptown. The problem is white people started viewing it as a black building. I mean, it goes right back to the question I just answered. We can't start letting them make us think ourselves as separate and apart. The economics of this country is based on, is not based on segregated living and operations. So when we ran the numbers, if we had had full occupancy of East Independence Plaza, which we never got because the black community responded favorably, the white community responded negatively, right? We couldn't get the county to rent any space in the building until they bought it and named it the Walton Plaza. We couldn't get the downtown business community to consider this as anything other than a black building. But the economics of this building would have worked just like any other economic development but for racism and segregation and backward thinking of people. We were able to convince a lender that that the economics of this building was sound, because I knew how to do that. You know, it took me a while to figure it out, but we were never as successful as the downtown buildings because we couldn't get the downtown community to understand that this was a venture for the city of Charlotte, not just a venture for the black community. Okay.
All right, Danielle, you're going to close us out with your question.
All right, thank you. I'm Jane A. Thomas with the Park Community Development Corporation, so I love to hear Attorney Sumter talk about the collectivism and collaboration amongst churches working in the affordable housing space. So I wish my question would have came like 3 questions ago because I feel like it was answered, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So given the strides and influence that you all have made here in the city of Charlotte and really nationally, what are the most significant legal obstacles you believe need to be dismantled to achieve true economic mobility and economic development within our community?
Racism.
Period. Okay.
In every aspect of economic development, there's still racism, and it plays itself through on the development side, on the finance side, on the occupation side. Who's willing to either rent or occupy your space? It's something we can't get away from. Race has just defined so much of everything, basically. I mean, when you read my book, what you'll find is that race has defined essentially everything in my life. I was born in a segregated hospital. I went to segregated schools. You can't get away from it. That's why I'm warning this young lady, you're gonna have to fight this battle every day. You can't get away from it. And you're gonna have to be 2 times better than the people that you're competing against.
Well, I want to follow what Mel said too, but I'm up here on the podium, so I can't cut for him. But I think we have to see that somewhere amidst every adversity, every setback, every instance of discrimination that we encounter, even today, somewhere in that, there is opportunity. And I think that the simplest way to say that is whenever there is adversity, instead of shrinking and saying, oh my God, they did it to us again, this is terrible, what are we going to do? I think you look at that and say, well, it is true. They did it to us again, but every time it's been done, there's been some opportunity there. So I've got to find the opportunity and make opportunity out of adversity. See opportunity in diversity and have the vision, the wisdom, and the courage to do something about it and to use adversity as opportunity. It's always there, but it's not always easy to see. But it's there, and I mean, that's what has carried us where we are. Mill talked a little bit about the building, East Independence Plaza. Well, the building didn't happen because a group of black folks sat down and said, okay, y'all, let's build a building where we can be. I can tell you that when our office got burned, we had a nice house on 10th Street, just off of downtown. And when the building got burned, I'll never forget that call Mill talked about early in the morning, when it was discovered that the building was burned, that the White House, where our offices were, was burned, we were dejected. We were downhearted. We were disappointed. We were all of those things. And to add to that, when we started looking for office space in downtown Charlotte, we were turned down. Everywhere we went, we were turned down. It's almost like the day before the building burned, Charlotte had vacancies all over the place. The day after the building was burned, all those vacancies were gone. When we were looking for office space, we couldn't find any office space, so we wound up making office space out of a closed in a closed hotel. I think it was the White House Inn, a huge hotel down here on somewhere downtown. But we went there because we couldn't find an office space anywhere. It was all gone. But we went to the White House Inn. We made office space out of hotel rooms. It was an old hotel. And from there, we started looking for somewhere else to go. And that's how East Independence Plaza came about. We couldn't find office space anywhere else. So we created office space. We made our own office space. And it worked. So there's always opportunity in adversity. You don't even know it's there. You don't see it when you look at it. But it's there, and you have to find it. You don't ever know how it's going to manifest itself.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I want to acknowledge Shay, Steve, Ms. Walker, Ratliff, and Travis. Apologies for not being able to get to your questions. Councilman Graham, thank you so much for breakfast. I hear you got a book coming out as well, right?
Next month.
Next month. Also, Congressman Watt, if you have just a period, we can expect your book, and Attorney Ferguson, your memoirs as well. Just please.
I wish I knew. He's ahead of me, but I'm still trying to deal with publishers and trying to figure out who's gonna publish it. But I'm hopeful that this book is going to be out in the open sometime in 2025. So
we look forward. You got to come back now. All right. So
I'll come back.
All right.
So if Melvin's book is coming out in 2025, you all look for mine in 2035. I haven't started yet, so it may take me a little time. We're coming.
Same rules. You got to come back. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Please join us next week. We are right here every second Tuesday. We're going to have breakfast for you. We're feeding. The second Tuesday, we're going to start at 7:30 for networking. Next week, we will have the smaller houses of faith in Charlotte, such as Lutheran, in African American Charlotte, Lutheran, Presbyterian, Episcopalian, Catholic. So yes, if you want to know the history of how those black folk found their way to those faith houses, please join us. Thank you for your coffee donations as well. You can find the screen if you want to go review the tape on TuesdayMorningCharlotte.org. We'll see you next week.
You guys take a picture with Kennedy, our young student that joined us today. Let's go to the bathroom. Let's go to the bathroom.